When then small-town city mayor Pete Buttigieg beat longtime, well-known Democrats in the 2020 Iowa caucuses, he shook the political world. He also became the first openly gay man to win a major presidential primary contest, and his husband, Chasten Buttigieg, was right by his side. Since then, Mayor Pete became Secretary Pete, and he spent 4 years as President Biden's transportation secretary. The couple adopted twins in 2021, and the family then moved to Chasten's home state of Michigan. Chasten Buttigieg is now also the author of the new children's book, Papa's Coming Home, and joins me here now live. First of all, it's Pub Day.
Yeah.
Happy Pub Day.
Thank you so much.
It's a great book. And I first wanted to know the obvious, which is what inspired you to do this?
Well, I wanted a book that looked like our family. And when I was looking around after our kids were born for books that looked like our family, I was coming up short. So that's where the idea came from. And then it was also just really important for me to have a book that had a central message of unconditional love. It didn't have to have any moral or lesson up front. I just wanted a sweet day in the life story of a family that looked like ours. And then I actually wrote it on an airplane. I was coming home from a work trip and thought about how excited I was to get home and how excited they might be to welcome me home. And that's where this idea started.
Yeah, and it's the idea in here is something that every kid of a working and traveling parent can relate to, and every parent, obviously this is what inspired you, you're saying, who has kids at home, who cannot wait to get home, can relate to. But what you just said is really interesting. The idea that it's two dads is just part of the story. Mm-hmm. It's not the story.
Yeah. I've always believed that some of the best work I can do for my community is just living with my values and just showing people who I am rather than telling. I also think it's really important that we have a book we can read our kids at bedtime that might not prompt a larger discussion or telling our kids or reminding them that they're different in some way. I just want a sweet story to read to my kids at bedtime. And obviously I've had my copy for a couple more months. It's coming out today, but our kids have read it 1,000 times and it's so cool.
Do they like it?
They do. I mean, I think maybe they're a little biased because it kind of looks like them. But it's so nice to just read a story where in the end it's just about unconditional love. The papa's coming home and the kids bring all this stuff to the airport because they think he'll have missed all this stuff. And he tells them, I like those things, but the best part about coming home is you. And that's just something I try to remind my kids all the time, that it's love is the most important thing. Love is what makes a family a family. And I love you so much more than I love all the stuff around us.
So that's a message that most parents, regardless of who they are, can give and should give to their kids. What is the real thing that makes you and your husband unique is that you're in the public eye.
Yeah.
Very much so. And when your husband ran for office, for high office the first time, you didn't have kids.
Right.
And so how does the kind of way you look at your public life, both of you, now that you have kids, how is it different?
Well, I think work-life balance is real for every parent. For us, it's just different because it involves a lot of travel. It also involves having to say yes or no to things where people really need you. They really need you to step up. Maybe they are making a hard case that it's a hard thing to say no to. People are either looking for leadership, or they're feeling alone or misunderstood. And you have an opportunity with your platform to do some good there, but then you also have the school concert on Friday that you don't want to miss. So it's a lot of negotiating, just like every other family, how much time you're going to spend on the road, and we try our best to make sure that one of us is always home with them.
Speaking of negotiations, I have to ask.
Okay.
Pete Buttigieg, your husband, he chose not to run for Senate in Michigan or governor.
Yeah.
He's been out and about a lot. He has a new beard, which I do want to get your opinion on. But most importantly, have you discussed whether he will consider running again for president and how that affects your family?
I'm glad that he said no to running in Michigan.
How come?
Well, I love him. I believe in him. I think he's fantastic. But we've spent the last 4 years in Washington, and I really wanted him to be home. And I think that was a really tough decision for him because Papa was gone a lot. And I think he wants to be home right now, too. One of the worst things I feel like people say to you when you're a parent is it goes by so fast. And I'm really scared of that that you can believe that the work is so important that you continuously sacrifice time with your family. And I think right now, just what we needed was time to be a family. Obviously, I'm very proud of Pete and the way that he can inspire people or communicate with people. So it's sometimes difficult to share him, right? You want to be home and you want to be a family, but people are also hurting. And I know that he's really good at listening and inspiring. So, again, another negotiation.
Yeah, well, they're almost 4 now.
Yeah.
In 2028, they'll be almost 8.
Yeah.
It has to be part of the calculus, no?
It's a scary calculus, and it's one that I try not to let seep into our home every day. I'm not naive to the reality that people talk about it, that he's very good at what he does. I think one of my jobs as their dad and as his spouse is to bring him back down to earth, right? When you're in politics, it feels like everyone around you, their job is to catapult you. And as a spouse, your job is to kind of hold on to the tether and pull them back down to earth and remind them of the things that really matter around them. And I think Pete's really enjoying being a dad right now. And it's very difficult to go through life having people constantly remind you that that could be a possibility when you're just trying to focus on being a good dad and being a good family.
So TBD on 2028.
Yeah, I'm not really ready to think about it.
I don't blame you. Well, let's think about this book. It's really terrific, very inspiring, and
Thanks.
I love the art as well.
Thanks so much for sharing and making time for Joy.
Thank you. Oh yeah, joy.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that.
Yeah.
My panel is back. And Abby, before we got to the 2028 question, he brought up the fact that Secretary Buttigieg, his husband, decided not to run in Michigan for senator, or most specifically for governor. And he said, I think he wants to be at home.
I think it was an interesting comment, and that was such a thoughtful interview also. Because when that news broke, everyone thought, oh my gosh, he's gearing up to run for president, that he's bypassing that. And so I think what that interview just revealed is that, like, sometimes the decisions aren't always made when we think they're made.
Or how?
Or how.
Look, he's a twin dad. As a father, of twins myself, I'm just impressed that he wasn't asleep on your desk with his head down there. It's hard work with twins who are nearly 4. I will say, when he told you he's not ready to think about yet the idea of Secretary Buttigieg running for president, I felt like saying, he was just in Iowa last week. I promise you he wasn't in Iowa because he's not thinking about running for president. I mean, with all due respect to Iowa, that's why you go to Iowa, is if you think you're going to run for president there. So it's full on.
And this is a politician who thought he was the best qualified Democrat in America to be president after he'd been mayor of a very, very small town, right? Now he's a national figure. He's respected for his ability to communicate. He's been a cabinet secretary. So look, in all likelihood, he is going to run for president, but it shows that there's real personal considerations in addition to the political ones.
Yeah, which, we hear that and we sometimes think that's like F4 on the computer. I have to spend more time with our family. But it happens to be a thing, and I like also the fact that he said it's his job to sort of tether him back down to earth.